and welcome to the first Arena Futures seminar. I'm Karis Thomas, Chair of Arena Futures, and my background in hospitality includes working for Bidfood, BBC Food Service as a PR manager. In my role now, I work for Upfield, looking after brands including florist breads and creams and stalk margarine. We're really excited about our first ever Arena Futures event. It's not just our first virtual event. And before I introduce you to all of our committee and what Arena Futures stand for, I'm going to ask Lorraine Wood, Director of Arena, to run through the technical side of this seminar.
Thank you, Karis. As Karis said, I'm Lorraine Wood. I'm the Director of Arena. And before I actually cover any of the general housekeeping points, I'm quite conscious that some of you may not know who Arena is or even what Arena Futures is. So I'm going to give you a very brief whistle-stop tour of Arena before I hand you back to Karis to explain a bit more about Arena Futures. So Arena is basically a membership-based organisation for food service and hospitality. We've been established now for nearly 35 years. And through our portfolio of live events, our aim is to provide an educational, inspirational and engaging platform for our members to create new business relationships, catch up with industry colleagues, and also to hear from industry speakers, whilst at the same time experiencing some hospitality of some fantastic venues. But unfortunately, COVID-19 has suspended that for the time being. So we've taken Arena into the virtual world. Now, I'm sure you're all used to viewing virtual events either via Zoom or Microsoft Teams, but just to remind you all that you can hear and see us, hopefully, but we can't hear or see you. But we do want to make this session as interactive as possible. So if you go to the bottom of your screens, you'll see a Q&A box. So you can actually ask questions either anonymously or you can tell us who you are. And then at the end of the session, I'll be hosting a Q&A session with the panel using the questions that you've actually submitted. So we'll try and get through as many questions as possible. Also, if you'd like to follow Arena on Twitter and tweet about today's event, you can follow us at Arena Networking. And the hashtag is #AskArena. And you can also follow Arena Futures on LinkedIn. As with all Arena events, our live ones and our virtual ones, I'll be sending out a feedback form at the end. It will literally take you 2 minutes to complete. And it's really important for us to find out what you thought of today, what you liked, what you thought could be improved upon, and also what topics you'd like to hear about going forward from Arena Futures. So I hope you all enjoy today. Thank you once again for joining us. And I'll now hand you back to Karis to explain a little more about Arena Futures and introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. So Arena Futures became a concept in 2019, which already seems like a long time ago. The idea was and remains to attract a new audience to Arena of junior industry members who can network and build contacts before joining the main Arena events. Between our team of committee members and ambassadors, we set up Arena Futures to help younger team members and people at the beginning of their hospitality career to connect, develop and grow. Our first live event was cancelled last year for obvious reasons, and now after almost a year, we've decided to launch in the virtual world. Today's event is our growth event and appropriately titled Growing into 2021. I'll just introduce the committee members joining me on our panel discussion. Ellen Potts is a Gen Zed professional at the beginning of her career, working for ISS in operational and strategic project roles. Natalie Tuckwood is a millennial who works in the ISS legal team, supporting the business with data protection, compliance and corporate governance. And Victoria Joseph is another fellow millennial PR and marketing specialist who works at William Murray Communications, working with clients from contract caterers through to food manufacturers. We also have a special guest as the host of our seminar. She is the founder of KAM Media, which is a leading successful insight agency. She's a trustee of the British Institute of Innkeeping and an advisor for both Pub Aid and Only a Pavement Away charities. I'm sure she won't mind me revealing that she too is a millennial, and we are excited to share her knowledge and enthusiasm for the industry, combined with data-led trends and insights and our panel discussion to provide inspiration for many of you. So without further ado, I hand over to Katy Moses.
Thank you very much, Caris. What an introduction, and how wonderful to be described to a large group of people as a millennial. I'd like for you all to write that down and never ever forget it, that I am still a millennial. Thank you so much for introducing me, Caris, and thank you so much to Arena as well. I'm really proud and honoured to be part of this event, because the people who put this together, and hopefully you guys out there who are watching it, are the people who are going to be the future of this industry. So it's absolutely fantastic to be involved. So I'm just going to share my screen with you now, because I'm going to be taking you through some insight today. There we go. Right, that should be good. What I'm going to be taking you through is the idea of a post-pandemic consumer. So what does growing into 2021 look like? So I'm going to be talking about the post-pandemic consumer, the trends that we were seeing in 2019 and how they look in a 2021 landscape. Then I'm going to have a pause, and we're going to have a couple of the Arena Futures women back, and we're going to have a conversation about the insight that I've shared. Then we're going to go into Generation Z and talk about what tomorrow's customer looks like and what they want from the hospitality industry. And then we're going to go back to a panel discussion. So I'm going to crack straight on with the research. But before I do that, I'm just going to unfortunately take you back 10 months in time, which we would all absolutely love to be able to do. I think we might make some different choices and make some different decisions if we could. So what was happening 10 months ago? We had Boris Johnson announced that the pubs and non-essential retail and restaurants and all those things where we like to spend our leisure time must close. It was the whole stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives, that's changed a gazillion times since then. Panic buying had already happened. Flights started to be cancelled. That suddenly, those of us that were technologically unaware before, that's me, by the way, suddenly had to learn how to use Zoom and Teams and Blue Jeans and all of that side of things. And then there was homeschooling, which of course is, I haven't had to do myself, but I've been told is an absolute joy. And then, of course, we looked at the amount of people that were working from home. So we had approximately 9.5 million people were working from home within the first 2 weeks of lockdown number one. We then had furlough, and then we had the point of, we had that sort of, that realization that we weren't going to see friends, and we weren't going to see family for quite some time. So that's kind of where we were 10 months ago. What did this mean for food and drink? Well, number one, people actually had to feed themselves. So those of us like me who would possibly be going out and, having business lunches and breakfast with friends and bottomless brunches and all those kind of things, not anymore. We suddenly had to feed each other, ourselves 3 meals a day. There's a massive rise all of a sudden in home cooking. Those of you who do like to bake will remember how it was absolutely impossible to get hold of absolutely any flour or yeast or anything like that. We had a shortage of pasta, we had a shortage of rice. Drinking habits started to change. Obviously, people were drinking more at home, they weren't drinking out. Overall consumption, by the way, hasn't actually changed that much. Well, on average, the UK consumer is having 1 more unit of alcohol per week. But of course, what it meant was that supermarkets and C-stores, etc., were benefiting where restaurants, bars and pubs were not. We then started to see restaurants, pubs and bars doing delivery. You've got a wonderful picture of the lovely Tim from the Y Mill, from Yummy Pubs there. They weren't just doing delivery of food and drink, they started doing grocery delivery. And we started with this idea that we call the blurring of the channels. So the idea that, consumers weren't just looking for out of home or in home, but actually those two things were blurring. And actually the only thing that really mattered was getting the products to the consumer in the right quality and in the right timings. You'll see that there, the phrase direct to consumer, we had a lot of wholesalers and various other different suppliers who suddenly started to take the product straight to the consumer rather than to the middleman of the pub, the bar, the restaurant, the cafe. And then, of course, the recession, we were likely to fall into recession, and we kind of dip in and out a little bit at the moment. So, of course, we then looked at what was happening with the pockets of the Great British Public, and I'm going to come on to a little bit of that in a minute. Now, when the first lockdown eased, what happens? Well, we predicted this in our post-corona consumer white paper, which you can find on our website if you'd like to download it. We were split into 2 areas. When the first lockdown ended, some people came back and were rampaging through pubs, bars and restaurants at a safe distance and with the right amount of people and outside and doing whatever else they were told they had to do. And other people were staying at home. So you had the guys that were really sort of like, I need to get out, I want to see people, I want to interact with hospitality. Then you had the people for whom staying at home had become more important, you know, that family time, the bloody workout with Joe Wicks, the cooking your own pasta and painting the front of your house, or whatever people did. The current situation as we see it, we are still being told to stay at home, protect the NHS and save lives. We've kind of learned to stay at home now. I'm going to show you some data later that tells you exactly what the UK public is thinking. And I think we've got used to it now, which we must bear in mind. When we reopen hospitality, we're going to have to work so hard to get people back into it and for them to feel safe. People are still eating at home because nowhere else is open. Delivery has become massive now. Delivery apps, whether it's local, whether it's international, whether it's meal kits, we're going to talk about those a bit later. You know, people are still nervous. People are still very connected to their homes. So for anyone in hospitality that's thinking when we reopen, people are going to be bundling back in, yes, they will, but maybe not to the extent that we expect them to or that they were previously. How are we feeling now? If I asked you to say one word about how you're feeling right now, yell it at the screen if you want, because I can't hear you and no one else can either. But the number 2 emotions between Brits this week was stressed and frustrated. Although I'm reliably informed that in the last 24 or so hours, boredom has equaled with stressed. We are feeling less fear, which is interesting considering we are obviously looking at a sort of second, third peak, and we're looking at different strains, but you know, 15% of people at the moment are scared, whereas 36% were back in March. The nation's top concerns were health and the economy, but education is climbing into that too. And anyone that's got kids or stepkids or whatever, or any children you interact with, your mental health is taking a real battering at the moment, and I think the entire country is aware of that. But 85% of people do still support the current lockdown, despite the fact that consumer confidence is at a 6-month low. And there, just to finish up, 52% of people describe 2020 as bad or terrible. I've got other words, and 38% said it was okay. So there's the good news. Let's just look into the future. I want to just cover off very, very quickly, and I'm going to speed through these because we've got a lot to get through today. These are the 5 areas that we believe the trends that have developed over the last 10 months are here to stay. Let's talk about money. 25% of UK adults say money will be tighter for them in 2021. And 35% of adults are thinking more carefully about how they spend their money. And, you know, this is a result of unemployment being up, people being on furlough, so maybe only getting 80% of their salary. Please remember the excluded. There are 3 million people out there who are not entitled to anything because they are newly self-employed or they're limited company directors. And there's quite a few of those that are based in the hospitality industry. But there is some pent-up consumer spending, because for those people who, you know, maybe have put mortgage payments on hold, but and have got some savings, they haven't been out to spend it anywhere. There's been no fantastic holidays. There's been no expensive lunches out with friends. So there is some spending to be had, and some of that spending could end up in the hospitality industry. What we have to remember is no matter what level of spending ability the customer has going back into hospitality, they will be even more relentless on making sure they get value for money. And value for money is not price. It's not about price discounts. It's about weighing up what I'm going to spend with the experience that I'm going to have. And any operators out there really need to sit down with a piece of paper and say, what is everything that I'm offering to make this experience the best it can be for a consumer? And moving on from that, special occasions are going to become very important. Think about how many special occasions we've missed. You know, I mean, you know, I've missed a birthday. My husband's missed a birthday. I've missed both my stepson's 18th and 21st. You know, people are going to want to celebrate. They may well be retrospectively celebrating, or they may well just be absolutely going for it on a birthday or an anniversary because they didn't get to do it last year. So there's just some data and some insight there for you about the top special occasions for eating out pre-lockdown. There's also a little watch out here. You can see Mother's Day and Valentine's Day both come quite high up in the sort of overall holidays that we have. Both of those are going to be in lockdown this time round. So if you're an operator, you need to be treating that event as though it's in your venue. But how are you going to bring that venue into somebody's front room stroke kitchen? The second trend out of the 5 I think is going to be here to stay post-lockdown is a tech-enhanced experience. We know there's been a growth in e-commerce. I don't need to tell anybody that people are buying more online, but the point to make here is to bear in mind that the people who are buying more online are the people who possibly weren't engaging online so much before. So we've really attracted the over 70s to online shopping, to online Zooms, etc. My 90-year-old grandmother can now FaceTime. She, however, can't do her Sainsbury's shop online because I might have to throw myself off a bridge if I had to talk her through that. We also look at digital marketing. Digital marketing has become even more important than it ever was before. And you know, I do sometimes hear people say to me, well, I don't really have much of a budget for it. Find the budget for it. This is it now. There are, you know, people who weren't engaging with you online now, the 70 plus, for example, those people are now online. You need to be there too. And of course, the tech-enabled consumer, you know, could I have used an app in a pub, bar or restaurant a year ago? Probably. Would I have wanted to? Probably not. Now I do. Well, now I can and I do. So we need to be aware that our consumers are far more tech-enabled than they used to be. This research was done 5-6 months before the last lockdown, the first lockdown. This was the situation in pubs, bars and restaurants. 1 in 5 would make reservations online, 56% checked a menu online, 26-28, you can see the figures there. The point I'm making here is not about those individual figures. It's about the fact that all of those will have increased as the people like myself who were just a bit tech shy have got involved, as the people in the generations above who maybe didn't know how to use that tech have got involved. So if that was how it was pre-pandemic, imagine what it's going to be like post, when we are all online for, by the way, 1/4 of your waking time now is spent in front of a screen. So yes, say hello to Contactless Dining. You can see here, this is a piece of work we did called Return of the Pub. We did this just before the pubs opened after the first lockdown. We asked 1,000 pub goers, what mobile apps would you like to see in venues as part of ongoing safety measures? You can see that the first one that came out there with 40% is an app that you can use to place your order at your table, which pretty much everybody now has. But then you've also got where you can pay with your phone and say, well, you can pre-order, you know, all of these different actions that we're now taking, not just to be safe, but also to simplify things, to be convenient. Prior to the lockdown, 50% of customers think that pubs and bars were behind other leisure outlets like retail when it comes to their use of tech. So we need to bear in mind as well that in that same piece of research, 57% of publicans told us that an increased use of technology would be positive for the industry. So just going on to the third of the 5, health and wellness magnified. We know everyone wants to feel safe in venues. We know that you've got to wipe down tables. We know that everything needs to be clean. It was, however, the #1 reason that customers didn't return to hospitality. So when we spoke to people just before the first lockdown ended, and we said, will you be coming back to hospitality or not? Those who said they weren't, the #1 reason that they weren't returning was because they didn't feel safe. But the good news is that only 18% of them didn't feel safe at all returning to a pub or a bar. So we've got 82% of people who felt perfectly safe, and that will have increased for this latest lockdown. Going back to health, remember that health was already really high on the agenda pre-lockdown. So these were the different areas that people wanted to see more of in pubs, bars and restaurants. And if you, by the way, I know I'm heading through these slides really quickly. If you'd like a copy, my email address will be at the end, or drop something on the Q&A and we'll make a note of your email and we'll send you these slides. But health was really high on the agenda pre-lockdown. That's only going to have increased. And with 54% of publicans were planning on increasing their range in healthy foods, again, that will have increased. And I just want to pause here for a second, because health in research in hospitality a few years ago meant, what am I putting into my body? It now also means, what am I doing with my mind? 37% of people that we spoke to in a recent research project told us that they're making a conscious effort to look after their mental health. So when we think about hospitality and we think about welcoming people back in, we've got to make sure that health and wellness, it's COVID protection, it's making sure that people are emotionally okay, it's helping people to reconnect, it's making sure our food is safe, it's making sure our physical spaces are safe, it's making sure that we've got functional food and healthy food available. All of those are not new to hospitality, but they've definitely got a new focus. Fourth out of five is hospitality at home. 25% of people set up a delivery service during lockdown. This was within a month of the first lockdown, these figures. We're going to redo this research, and it's something we're going to hopefully get out in the next couple of weeks. I'd love to see how those figures have increased. 20% hadn't set up delivery, but we're planning on doing so. So you're talking 45% of pubs, bars and restaurants either were set up for delivery or were going to be within a month of the first lockdown. But the most important thing there is the 80% that intend to continue. And I think we've seen that in the last 10 months, you know, all these amazing offers. I personally am trying to get one cook at home sort of meal kit a week. I've got a great Indian coming from Akhtar at home tonight. Very excited about. You know, this will continue, and I keep harping on about this on Twitter and LinkedIn. But hospitality at home is not going to go anywhere. It may well drop down as people start to go out to pubs, bars, and restaurants, but it's still going to be a thing, and we still need to be planning for it for our brands. And here's some hot off the press research that we did, which is asking whether people had used or were interested in using their local pubs for delivery. So this was in the Return of the Pub research, and you can see there, yes, I do, and I would like to continue. You know, that's big numbers, and the younger age group absolutely engaging in this, and they are the age group that we were struggling to get to engage so much with pubs. So for any publicans out there, you know, this is your entry point in for that age group. And I do believe that delivery will go from functional to experiential. So it's not just about bring me my food and bring it now. It's about make it cool. Give me drinks pairings, give me table, give me playlists. I've seen a couple of restaurants that are doing a couples thing for Valentine's Day, and they give you a couples game as well for it. I didn't look too deep into that, so I'm not exactly sure what it covered. Number 5, and finally, 2019 buzzwords in a 2021 landscape. You know, remember sustainability, remember eating less meat and veganism. Those things still exist. They did all dip down a little bit in the first few lockdowns because there was a bit of a, I just need to get stuff to my customers, so I'm going to bung it in plastic and get it out there. And there was a little bit of, you know, perhaps falling back into eating meat because it was easier or it was available or whatever. But these buzzwords are coming back now, and they are just slightly different in the landscape that we're in. Low and no, 1 in 2 consumed a low and no drink in 2020. Awareness of low and no has gone up. And of course, local, that idea of using local shops, local businesses, local pubs, bars and restaurants is also increasing. So in summary, supporting the post-pandemic consumer, money is tighter. Make sure that if we want to get people back into hospitality, we need to make sure that we are giving them a good reason to and giving them the value to. When we talk about tech enhanced experiences, the whole of the universe is more tech enhanced now. So we need to be as an industry. Health and wellness, it's up here as well as my body. And we need to make sure that our outlets and our outlook encompass that new focus. Hospitality at home, it's here to stay. If you don't have an offering, why not? Wouldn't you rather people were enjoying your brand in their home than not at all? You know, you can strike a balance and then go back to those 2019 buzzwords like low and no, like veganism, like sustainability, because they are also coming back. I am going to stop sharing my screen for 1 second because I want to welcome back Victoria Joseph from William Murray and Natalie Tuckwood from ISS to rejoin the webinar. Welcome back, ladies. Thank you very much. That was quite a download. Let's just talk first of all about what you think about the tightening of belts. Natalie, do you think you've seen a sort of tightening of belts when it comes to spending? What's your experience in that at the moment?
I suppose it depends a lot on sort of people's individual circumstances, whether they've been able to work over the last few months or not. But I think regardless of that, I've definitely noticed a sort of more caution when spending. I definitely ask myself a question now, or do you really need to spend money on that? And I think that's because we've sort of stripped back so much because we've kind of had to, and been reliant just on the necessities of life, really. So definitely been a bit more cautious. Yeah.
And Victoria, what are your thoughts on that? Is there anything you're seeing people spend, or you yourself or your friends or family are spending more or less on?
Yeah, I would say I've been quite fortunate in that I've been able to continue working the past year. But with that, I've been working from home. I'm not traveling as much. I don't have any social outgoing. So for me, my disposable income has increased to some degree. So I think, you know, for me, I would probably admit that I am spending more. Just I think to have something that I can focus on and have something out of the ordinary that I can bring into the house to look forward to, rather than the routine or the mundane that we're experiencing at the moment. And I think having had more time now, I focus more on my health and my well-being, and with that, you know, I've got various subscriptions on the go at the moment, from fitness apps to organic health, you know, fruit and veg boxes. And I think with that, it just allows me to experience different things as well. And as I said, just bring a bit of an experience into the house.
Thank you. You heard me mention hospitality at home just now. So that's all the, you know, the sort of finish off and cook off meal kits. Victoria, have you used any of those? Do you know anyone that has? What's your opinion on those? Do you think they're here to stay? Oh, I think Victoria is frozen.
I do have so many of them.
She's back. Okay, I think we're just having a couple of tech problems.
Can you hear me?
I think we're having a couple of tech problems. Victoria, are you there? If not, I'm going to go to Natalie. Yeah, you've frozen. Natalie, do you want to just take over on that one? And Victoria, I'm just.
Oh no, she's having a bit of a delay. Hospitality at home, I haven't used as many as I've wanted to be honest. I keep making a mental note. I mean, I've seen a few that you have spoken about on LinkedIn, Katy, and they look amazing. I have tried a few sort of restaurant experiences at home. So at Christmas and my birthday next week will be a similar thing. But yeah, I really need to start trying more, to be honest, because I think some of them look lovely, and I wouldn't be surprised that they're sort of here to stay. So yeah, I think it tends to go hand in hand with having an occasion to celebrate for me. But like Victoria has just said, you kind of want a distinction from the working week and sort of the weekend. So I'll definitely start to, I think, because, you know, we need to treat ourselves a bit more, if you ask me. So yeah.
Absolutely. And Victoria, I think you're back with us now. So as soon as you were having struggles with technology, let's talk about technology within hospitality. Is it good? Is it bad? Is there anything we're seeing that's superfluous to our needs at the moment? What are your thoughts?
I think, you know, if I look to before COVID, it was probably lagging behind other areas, but we've definitely come on leaps and bounds over this period for sure. And I think, you know, there's been some real implementations that I've certainly appreciated. You know, having virtual queues, for example, have been a godsend. Definitely it helps a lot with my frustrations there, and the ability to be able to pay for a bill at your own leisure is fantastic. But what I would say is, for me, kind of, you know, the ordering direct from your phone is fantastic, it's great, but to be honest, I definitely miss that kind of personal aspect from a dining experience. So where we've had that opportunity to go back into restaurants, there have been occasions where I have barely seen a member of staff. You know, I've been seated at my table and I've been served, but then that whole experience has been via an app, and it's amazing that we can do that. But I very much miss that human interaction, and it really, for me, is the essence of what hospitality is about. So I think while we're making these great strides, I would really urge us to maybe straddle that line a bit carefully so that we don't lose that.
Absolutely. So essentially, we do not want the robots to take over, and we do still want that personal touch. Natalie, Victoria, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to have you back at the end of this, and we're just going to crack on with some insight into Gen Zed now. But thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you in a bit.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to go back now into some of our KAM research. For those of you who don't know KAM Media, by the way, we are a research agency specialising in hospitality and grocery retail. You've got my Twitter handle just down the bottom, and I'm going to give you our website address at the end. And again, we're very happy to share these slides with you. Just drop me an email and I will get them across to you as soon as I can. Let's talk about Gen Z, because Arena Futures is all about exactly that. It's about the future of the industry, and we couldn't possibly discuss the future of the industry without discussing Gen Z. So first of all, who are they? Gen Z are born between, the mid-90s to 2010. They are around 10 to 25 years old. For the purpose of any research I'll be showing you today, we only interviewed the ages 18 to 25, because interviewing people younger than that means you've got to get parental permission. It's an absolute nightmare to do. So what and who are Gen Z? Well, we already know that technology plays a vital role in delivering an experience for them. So 23% of Gen Z spend more than 7 hours on their phone every day. Now that sounds like an amazing amount of time, doesn't it? You think, well, they don't have time to do anything else. But they're doing everything on their phone. They're communicating with each other. They're watching TV shows. They're watching films. They're listening to music. They're reading the news. They're ordering dinner. They're buying a coffee. The only thing they're really doing in real life is picking up the things that they're purchasing on their phones. And back in the olden days when we were allowed to see each other, actually seeing their friends that they arranged to meet on their phones. It's an extension of their being now for Gen Z. And we need to remember that. We need to be able to interact with them through the medium of their phones, but to provide with real life experience. And just remember, just because they're Gen Z doesn't mean that technology should be doing anything majorly different from what it should be doing with everyone else. It should be aimed at improving the experience, improving the customer experience, making their experience frictionless. Getting a like on Instagram for something is one thing, but if you make somebody's life easier and more pleasant, then that's where technology plays a very vital role for Gen Z. Health is incredibly high on the radar for Gen Z. It's not just about going to the gym and smashing out an hour on a bike and then coming home. It's much more about hanging out, meeting with like-minded friends, meeting new friends. 11% of Gen Z do more than 1 hour exercise a day. 53% do more than 30 minutes of exercise a day. So connecting with Gen Z, it's not just about being on their phone. It's also about, you heard, I think was it Victoria or Natalie talk about putting more of an emphasis on health and wellness during the lockdowns. And of course, you do have that time to be introspective. And for this particular generation, they were already focused on that. So that's going to become even more important to them. They also need a greater variety in dietary requirements. The government estimates that around 9 in 10 adults are meat eaters, compared to just 59% of Gen Z. This generation is really at the beginning of a bit of a revolution as to where, the emphasis is on choice, it's on transparency. I want to know what I'm putting into my body. I want to know that I'm eating well. I want to know that I'm exercising well. It's perfectly normal for Gen Z to be vegetarian or flexitarian or vegan, or I was listening to a podcast the other day where somebody was describing themselves as the best vegan I can possibly be. Which of course is the best that any of us can ever be. You've got to do the best that's for yourself. If you consider what we used to sit down to eat, maybe when I was a kid, it was meat and 2 veg, whereas now the most cooked meal in the UK is spaghetti bolognese, by the way, the most home cooked meal. But a recent BBC survey showed that more than a quarter of meals cooked at home, dinners cooked at home, didn't contain any meat. And that's not specifically because the people cooking them are vegetarian. It's just by design. They just simply weren't. So meat is becoming less of a driver of choice. What's really important here is that as hospitality operators, we give our customers the same options as we give the meat eaters. It's the same with low and no alcohol. Just because I don't drink alcohol doesn't mean I'd want to drink rubbish drinks. I still want something good. Just because I don't eat meat doesn't mean I want one option on the menu. Why don't I have the same amount of options as my friends that I'm sitting with? And as I just mentioned, Gen Zeds really do have a different relationship with alcohol. 2 in 5 18 to 24-year-olds describe themselves as teetotal, and that's more than twice the number of UK adults. And Gen Z also are drinking a lot more low and no drinks, and they're drinking those alongside alcoholic drinks very often to regulate their alcohol intake. So when I was 18 and going out the door to a party, my mum would say, have a glass of water in between every drink, Katie. Well, Gen Z are actually doing that, but they're using low and no to do it. So another thing we're going to need in hospitality in order to provide the experience that these guys want is a really good low and no offering. There's also a little bit of underlying insight, just to give you, in case anyone's sitting out there thinking that Gen Z are sat at home in their nun's habits. There is a bit of underlying insight that tells us that those who are drinking, however, are drinking more than 14 units per week. So we've got two ends of the spectrum. We've got those that are teetotal. We've got those that are absolutely going for it. And then there's a couple in the middle that are going, I'm gonna actually understand what moderation is, and I'm gonna use it to my advantage. Gen Z have what we're calling a subscription addiction. We asked 1,000 Gen Zers what services do you currently interact with? And what we saw there is that 70% of people had Netflix, 56% Spotify, and many Gen Zs actually have a large selection of subscriptions. So again, if they're willing to subscribe to this, what would they be willing to subscribe to within the hospitality industry, whether that's hospitality at home, whether that's, that shows they'd be very open to a sort of loyalty scheme within hospitality. These are all the areas we need to look out for when we reopen hospitality to this generation. Ethics are really important to Gen Z. This particular research program is called Generation Z, and it is available on our website, or drop me an email and I can drop you the slides for it. 55% of people that we interviewed in Gen Z said the impact that a company has on my health will affect whether I interact with it or not, or whether I buy from it. 48% care about the impact the brand has on the environment, 44% their ethical stance, 21% their charity stance. It's all very well and good saying, yeah, I care about the environment or I care about charity, but actually you need to live these ideals for Gen Z. They've grown up in an area where everything is online, everything is open, they can see absolutely everything that's going on. So you need to be very, very authentic, because if you're not, then Gen Z are going to sniff that out. If they think you're faking it, then you've not got a chance of getting them back on board. This is a question that we asked. Which of the following is most likely to influence you to buy a particular product? 13% traditional brand adverts. You can see there 53% recommendation by friends, 6% celebrity endorsements, 27% social media. It's no longer about, do you remember well, I think most of you that are watching are very young, but I know there's a couple of older people in the industry online. The Gillette, a best a man can get adverts. Well, we would look at those and go, oh yeah, Gillette, best a man can get. Great. Well, that's the aftershave. That's the razor I buy for dad. It's not like that anymore. Those boxes are no longer available to us. We are looking at glass boxes brands. So you need to be able to absolutely live every single ideal, and you need to make sure that Gen Z are aware of what those ideals are that you stand for. So what does the future hold for Gen Z, and how do we interact with them in hospitality? We need to understand them. And again, there is an entire presentation on this on our website. Go on and download it. We need to empathize with them. So we need to understand what they're going through. Stop telling them they can't afford a house because they buy too many bloody avocados. They can't afford a house because the boomer's got all the luck. Connect with them on their level, understand them, and help build that loyalty, because that's the other thing, is that Gen Z are incredibly loyal. So once you've got them and they understand you and they trust you, and you're giving them the service and the product and the price and the love that they need, they will stay with you. From one final bit of advice from all the research that I spend hours and hours and hours looking at every day: just be open to change. It's a hospitality industry. Whatever's happening now, it will look different in 3 months, in 6 months, in 12 months. And we've learned that over the last 10 months. So just be open for change. There are loads and loads and loads of free resources on our website. Please jump online and have a look at them. All of this is available to you. We really want for the industry to come out of the blocks, the running start when we reopen. And there's my email address. Drop me an email. I'll send you today's slides. And now I would like to welcome back Caris Thomas from Upfield and Ellen Potts from ISS to join me for some question and answer on Gen Z. Now, Ellen, you are actually a Gen Zer, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I am on the cusp. I'm almost millennial, but I am actually a Gen Z, yeah.
Well, that's fine, because I'm just like fingernails into the millennial side of things. I think Karis might be at the other end of it. Let's talk about what you think the defining characteristics of Gen Z are. And Ellen, because you are one, I'm going to start you off. What do you think defines Gen Z?
I think that's a really interesting question, because what we have to remember, Gen Z, are 10-year-olds to 25-year-olds, right? So it's no different to any other generation. There is obviously that age gap between the youngest and the oldest, but we've grown up in a time that has changed so dramatically between what the 10-year-olds and the 25-year-olds are experiencing. So I think you probably can say that there are, stereotypical characteristics of a Gen Z, but I think the extreme that we see those characteristics completely depends on what kind of part of the range you are in terms of age. Mm-hmm. So it's a difficult one. I think the first characteristic that I'd probably point out is the kind of need for external validation. And I think we see that a lot on social media, particularly the rise of Instagram. For me personally, it's been less about social media and actually more my work. I joined a grad scheme fresh out of university, so I was as young as you could get while still being qualified, and I did feel like I needed external validation to say, yeah, you should be in this business, you should be in that role, and it wasn't enough in myself, so I had to constantly ask for feedback, and it did take a few iterations of that process for me to actually say, okay, back yourself. Everything that you know internally is actually okay. So that was a key learning for me. And I think I've seen it in other Gen Z friends that I have, and even millennials as well, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I think, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, I think otherwise it's this constant need to be connected. You've mentioned, phones, apps, everything like that. If I pick up my phone, I can be connected to, quite a few people at any one time. So what happens when you're not connected? You can't just quickly Google something, and it does make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. Sometimes it's quite calming, but generally you think, what now? If you're not looking at your screen, what now? And I can definitely see that in even social settings as well. I'll be sat among my housemates, we'll all be on our phones talking to other people. So it is quite strange, but I think you see that in the whole range of Gen Z, to be honest with you.
Mm. Thank you, Ellen. Karis, I'd like to understand what you think. I want to pick up on a theme that Ellen just put across there, which is the sort of constant connection and Gen Z being hooked to their phones. What are your thoughts on that? And maybe cover off for millennials as well.
Yeah, I mean, as a millennial, I'm constantly being nagged for being on their phone all the time. So I think it's a problem we all have. But I think Gen Zeds tend to be more savvy with their phones and perhaps use them for more different things. So I would watch Netflix on the TV or on my iPad. If I was going to order from some food, I would probably open my laptop because I just want to view the menu like online and order there. So I wouldn't really have like a Just Eat app or a Deliveroo app on my phone. And I think that's partly because Gen Zers have been brought up with mobile phones in their lives the whole time. So I got my first mobile phone when I was 12, but even when I was 18, I only had like 50 minutes a month. And I remember going off to uni and not having any internet on my phone, having to ration those 50 minutes to like 1 minute a day to call my mum. So I think it's that phones are now integral to our lives for everyone. But if you've been brought up with it, you might approach it in a different way.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about ethics, because we keep hearing, Gen Z are incredibly ethical. The data that I just showed you, if you compare that to millennials, to baby boomers, etc., what a company does reflects very much on the propensity to purchase from that brand. Ellen, do you think that Gen Zs are more ethical than previous generations? Be careful.
I'm going to say yes, and it's not because I think we've randomly managed to make a generation that's got the morality of Mother Teresa or something, but it's just because we've grown up being able to see the direct impacts of what we're doing and what the companies we use are doing, and also we've been able to see solutions to that. There are so many kind of new innovations that we can now use to be more sustainable, or for companies to be more sustainable. So when we see that information online or on our phones, it does make a difference between who we decide to use as a consumer, or our own behaviours as well. So that's why it's the availability of information rather than a reflection on that generation, I'd say.
Okay, Caris, do you agree?
I just think being in that social media generation, the younger generation is more aware of their impacts, and therefore more demanding of the brands around, and want to have that one-on-one dialogue with brands, not just see like pretty pictures of food on Instagram. They actually want to see what is that brand doing and what does that brand stand for. And I think they probably see a frustration towards the older generations, and the younger you are, the more impact the future of the environment will have on your life, as morbid as that might sound. But you know, it's a long-term thing. We've got to think of future generations.
Thank you. And we're going to bring the whole panel back on very shortly, but just one other question I want to ask you, and Ellen, again, sorry, I keep putting you straight on the spot. I'm going to start with you again. See, this is it. It's because you're Gen Z and I'm jealous. How do hospitality brands need to treat Gen Z customers if they want to get them and keep them on side?
So I think you're completely right, and the research that you've done shows it kind of spot on. Authenticity is key. There is an element of trust between the brands that we decide to use, whether that's to do with ethics or the quality or the value for money. Those are all key decision makers, I'd say. I think what I've seen a lot recently, particularly in marketing that I've subscribed to receive, is that it's very conversational and it's very personable, and it tends to be from the owners of the company, or you know, the creators, the MDs, whoever. So it makes you feel like you've got that one-on-one connection.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think that's very important, to feel like you've got that rapport on a one-to-one level with the people who, you know, have responsibility for the products or the experience that you're buying.
Thank you. And Caris, do you want to finish us off? What do you think the hospitality brands need to do to get Gen Zs and millennials, just the sort of the younger generations, on board?
I think all consumers are more demanding now of what their needs are. So, you know, just something as simple as if you run a coffee shop, you have all the different types of milks and ethical coffees, etc. So I think making sure that you've got a varied range. And I also think encouraging online reviews. We've talked a lot about this kind of online digital generation, and therefore it's so easy to review. I probably wouldn't eat somewhere that's got less than 4-star rating on TripAdvisor, and that's not me being snobby about it. It's just so easy to find some other restaurant a few meters down offering sort of the same prices but with a better review online. So make sure you keep up to date with those online reviews, and try to offer something different so that gets picked out in the online review as well. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Caris and Ellen. I really appreciate that. And I'd like to bring back Natalie, Victoria, and the inimitable Lorraine Wood. We've had quite a lot of questions from the audience, so I'm going to thank you all very much for your time. I'm going to hand over to Lorraine for her to take us through any of those questions from the audience.
Thanks, Katie. That was really interesting. Certainly all the trends that you shared with us in the beginning, and also to hear the Arena Futures views on all of those too, actually. But we've had a few questions in, which I'm now going to run through. The first one I'm actually going to aim at Caris, which has come in from an anonymous attendee that we've got, which is basically, what do you think the long-lasting effects of COVID will be on the hospitality industry and the way you engage with it?
I think the first thing is an obvious one, that for at least a period or probably a long time, we're going to have a heightened sort of need for cleanliness. So obviously restaurants are clean and have always needed to be, but just things like having hand sanitizer on the table, that makes me really aware of my personal cleanliness within the restaurant. I always wash my hands, but I wouldn't immediately cleanse, sanitize them before I start eating. So I think that's something to stay. I also really think that a lot of restaurants I've seen have introduced kind of outdoor eating pods and glass between tables, and I actually quite liked it. I don't want to be completely separated from the restaurant with a big wall around me, but a glass wall it made our conversation feel a bit more private, but I could still see through the glass and see those around me, and I quite like that sectioning off of the restaurant. And then I also think it's about that whole experience. So Katie earlier mentioned that people are going to sort of want to celebrate all parties and things, and missed occasions, and I think people are initially going to want to go straight out and celebrate all the occasions they've missed, and really have an event within hospitality. But then after that might come a recession where, you know, people will go out and go crazy at first, but there will also be the consumers who are sort of more conscious of their finances, and therefore restaurants will need to offer different packages and different kind of value to draw people in the long term.
Yeah, that's interesting. What does everyone else think? Natalie, come over to you, because I know you've got some views on this. What's your perspective on this one?
Yeah, I really do think that their sort of focus on safety will stay. And whilst I agree fully with Victoria's point earlier in that, you know, when we dine out, we don't want it to be too robotic. We want it to be sort of a personal experience where you interact with the people that are providing you with the service. I think despite that, there might be an opportunity to implement some security that makes people feel a bit safer when they go to venues. So whether it be sort of sensors so that people know how many people are in there, if it's safe to go in, or whether, you know, people order online or pay for things online. I really do think that the focus on safety will be there to stay, really. I think that will be quite long lasting. Okay.
We've got another question in, another anonymous one actually, and I'm going to ask Ellen this one, which is quite interesting. Basically, they say, do you think the fact that hospitality has been negatively affected by COVID will mean that less young people will be attracted to working in the industry?
Oh, that is a good question. And I can see arguments for and against that. Against being, if you are looking for, you know, a career opportunity, would you go into somewhere that will be or is in a recession? I think the thing about Gen Z as well is that we love a bit of responsibility and we love a challenge, and it's the exciting times where you can actually put your name on something and say, I did that and I helped. So actually, I think it would be quite an exciting opportunity to help, you know, rebuild brands or the hospitality industry as a whole. So actually, it shouldn't be in the long term too disruptive, I think, to looking into careers for hospitality. But there may just be a downturn to begin with because of that uncertainty coming out of lockdowns and coronavirus and, you know, everything that goes along with that.
Yeah, this person's also asked, which Katy, I'm going to ask you on this one. What do you think the industry can do about it? What do you think we need to do about it to attract more young people into the industry?
Listen, I think that we're in a really good position to provide the kind of careers that we're being told the younger generation wants. We've done a lot of research into this, and we know that that Gen Zeds especially, but also us millennials, are quite often looking for what we call a portfolio career. So that's not, I've got one job that I do from 9 to 5 and I'm going to stay in that role for however long. But actually, I do a bit of social media marketing for one particular company. I've got a main job and I do that 4 days a week, but maybe I'm also an artist, or maybe, you know, all those different, that idea of having, you know, your finger in lots of pies. Hospitality is so well placed to allow people to have that freedom that actually, and I don't think we've ever made enough of this, we need to make a lot more of the fact that you can work in hospitality, and if you want to dedicate your life to that, that's great, but you can also do it as part of the other things that you want to do, and you do have that flexibility, whether that's flexibility of where you work, because if you work for a big company that's got 10 different restaurants, or whether it's flexibility on your hours. You know, as an industry, we're so well placed to deliver that, and I think that coming out of these lockdowns, that is definitely somewhere where we need to steer attention to, and we need to make sure that as operators and suppliers to the industry, we are providing those opportunities to Gen Z and millennials.
Brilliant. We've got another question in from John Paul Moses at McCain's.
Another Moses, I don't believe it.
Yeah, say hello. Basically, he's asking, and I'm going to aim this one at you, Victoria. So, which operators in hospitality do you think are doing a great job in attracting the Gen Zeds, and why?
Oh, that is a very good question. Well, I can talk, you know, currently in lockdown, not being able to go out, but being able to have those at-home offers. I think one in particular has really stood out for me, and that's Paso. I think they've done a really great job with the offer that they have given. It's very diverse. It caters to meat eaters and vegetarians alike. And as someone who's quite a fussy vegetarian, they have offers available to me that I know that I'm going to enjoy, and the quality is there. And that's something that I particularly enjoy.
Okay, brilliant. I'm conscious that we have got a few more questions to get through, actually, so I am going to move on, and I'm going to aim this one at Caris, seeing as that she works for a plant-based company. So we've got a question in from Chris Riley. So Chris has basically said, what impact do you see with plant-based over the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we do is sort of promoting plant-based eating, and our products are moving into that plant-based sphere. And I think plant-based is definitely here to grow. And that's not always just vegan eaters, but that's kind of flexitarians as well, and people trying to flex across the week of trying to cut out meals and so trying to cut out meat on certain days. So I think operators need to be able to provide for that, because quite often the fussiest eater or the person with the strictest dietary requirements within a group of friends will be the one that gets to choose the restaurant, and therefore you don't want to lose a whole group just because that person's needs are not met. So as long as you've got a couple of different kind of inspiring foods as well, on your menu, then I'm sure you'll attract that group in. I think that's really important to do.
Okay, brilliant. And we've got another question that, again, I'm going to come back to Victoria on, seeing as she works for William Murray. And this one's coming from Poppy Kellum. So Poppy is asking us, how are hospitality businesses reaching advertising at home experiences to consumers? Especially assume it's on Instagram is one of the key ways, but what other ways do you think they're able to reach consumers at home?
Yeah, I think there's a whole heap of routes that you can approach to engage with consumers. But what I would say is that, you know, Instagram isn't the only platform. We can look across, you know, the likes of Twitter, for example, looking at ways in which you can promote across our delivery apps such as Uber Eats and Deliveroo, to see what promotions that they've got available, how you can get a bigger profile there. But also, you know, how are you engaging directly with your existing customer base? Do you have email marketing databases that you can make use of? What promotions are you communicating to them as well? There's definitely worth considering that, and the messaging that you're driving to ensure that you recruit them and they stay loyal and consider reordering again and again.
Okay, and then we've got another question in from Piers Sangana, which is to everyone, and I think this would be a good one for you to answer, Natalie. So this question is: do you think the at-home market is something that will continue to grow, and is Gen Z embracing this?
Yeah, I suppose I do think it will continue to grow, because I think people have got a lot more, or they've kind of adapted to being at home. So, you know, whether it have been from decorating at home or just eating at home, I think people have adapted, they're used to it. I mean, me personally, I can't wait to sort of go out again. But I think that it will be, there is a place for it to grow sort of at home. And yeah, sorry, what was the second part of that question? Something about Gen Z.
So do you think Gen Z will actually embrace this?
I suppose it depends what it has to offer, whether it, you know, the kind of incorporating sort of the health and well-being, and whether it's sustainable. I mean, when my family actually use a particular brand for sort of meal at home kits, and I can't help but notice how much plastic is still being used. And I'm not Gen Z, but I know it's important to them, and I can imagine that they would, unless it's sort of sustainable and economically friendly and healthy for them, I can imagine that they might have an issue with it. So I suppose it depends on what they're offering and whether it's aligned with their sort of goals and their values.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. We have got a few more questions, but I'm very, very conscious that we're about to run out of time, and I know some people do have meetings to go to. So I am actually going to hand back to Caris now to wrap us up. Caris, over to you.
Thanks, Lorraine, and thanks everyone. And that leaves me to thank all of you for attending our first event and for engaging some of our Q&A session this afternoon. I hope you found the insights and the panel session useful for looking ahead into 2021. I want to say special thanks to Katy for hosting and sharing such useful insight, and to Lorraine for managing our Q&A session. We do plan to host many more Arena Futures events this year, and we ask you to encourage your millennial and Gen Z colleagues to join us too, particularly when it comes to connecting and development, where we want to help young people to make those connections. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. We've got our own page at Arena Futures, where we'll keep you up to date with our activities. So thank you all once again, and stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.